The Reach fleet arrived above Valacrest space without celebration. No fireworks, no ceremonial formation, no royal colors splashed across the void. Just ships, hundreds of them. Silent, precise, terrifying. Warships moved first, cutting through the darkness in disciplined rows. Medical carriers followed, then evacuation vessels, supply ships, shield platforms, civilian transport cruisers, communications arrays, engineering craft. Not an invasion fleet. Not exactly. Something worse if you were a ruler who had spent your life believing power belonged only to people with crowns. A rescue fleet. One designed to take control of a crisis before pride could turn it into a massacre. Aurora stood on the bridge of the lead diplomatic cruiser, arms folded, staring down at the planet below. Valacrest was beautiful. That annoyed her. Some part of her had expected it to look ugly, cold, cruel, like the people who had raised Mira. Instead, the world below was blue and green and gold. Continents curled beneath white cloud bands. Cities glittered along coastlines. Mountain ranges caught the sunlight like blades laid across velvet. A perfectly innocent world, ruled by people who had made Mira feel unwanted in her own life. Aurora hated that distinction, because it mattered. Plum leaned beside her, chewing something loudly. So? Aurora didn't look over. So? Plum nodded toward the planet. That's the place? Yeah. Looks expensive. Ellie glanced up from the tactical display. That's your political assessment? Plum shrugged. I'm easing into it. Mira stood near the rear of the bridge. Quiet. Too quiet. She had barely spoken since leaving Everlight. Not because she was afraid. Not exactly. More like she was trying to keep every emotion locked behind a door that had never been built properly. Celine stood beside her. Not hovering. Not fussing. Just there. Kenny was speaking quietly with Fleet Command near the central table, his expression calm in the way that made everyone else nervous. Aurora had learned that expression from childhood. That was the face Kenny wore when he had already decided what was going to happen, and everyone else was simply catching up. The main display flickered. A transmission request appeared. House Valcrest Capital Command. Kenny looked at it for half a second, then nodded. Open channel. The screen brightened. Lord Valacrest appeared in formal armor. Lady Valacrest stood beside him. Behind them, officers moved frantically through a command chamber that looked far less composed than its rulers wanted it to look. Lord Valacrest straightened. Lord Reach. Kenny nodded once. Lord Valacrest. His gaze moved to Lady Valacrest. Lady Valacrest. She gave the smallest possible nod, then her eyes moved past him. To Mira. The moment was tiny, barely there. But Aurora saw it. So did Celine. So did Mira. Mira's fingers curled slightly at her sides. Celine gently touched her wrist. Mira breathed. Kenny continued. Status. Lord Valacrest hesitated. Aurora almost laughed. He still wanted to perform. Still wanted to posture. Still wanted this conversation to feel like politics instead of emergency triage. Kenny's voice hardened slightly. Status. Now. Lord Valacrest swallowed. The rival house forces have crossed the outer agricultural territories. They are advancing toward the capital through the western corridor. Ellie's eyes flicked across the tactical display. How many? Lord Valacrest looked irritated at being questioned by someone he clearly considered beneath him. Kenny noticed. His expression did not change. Lord Valacrest answered anyway. Roughly 80,000 ground troops. Ellie's fingers moved across the display. Armor? Moderate. Air support? Limited. Civilian movement? Lord Valacrest paused. That pause told them everything. Aurora's jaw tightened. Ellie looked up slowly. You haven't evacuated the western corridor. Lady Valacrest cut in. If we empty those regions, it signals weakness. Plum stopped chewing. The bridge went very quiet. Mira closed her eyes. Aurora stepped forward before anyone could stop her. Say that again. Lady Valacrest's eyes narrowed. Aurora smiled without warmth. Please. The older woman said nothing. Aurora nodded. That's what I thought. Kenny looked toward Fleet Command. Begin civilian evacuation immediately. Western Corridor priority. Medical stations to landing zones 2 through 7. Shield platforms above the capital and agricultural settlements. A fleet officer nodded. Confirmed. Lord Valacrest stiffened. You cannot issue planetary orders without formal transfer of emergency authority. Kenny looked back at him. I can if your capital falls before the paperwork finishes. This is still our world. Kenny's eyes cooled. Then start acting like it. The words struck harder than shouting. Lord Valacrest fell silent. Kenny leaned forward. Reach forces are here to prevent civilian death, not to protect your pride, not to preserve your image, not to decorate your palace while people burn outside it. The command chamber behind Valacrest seemed to quiet. Even the officers were listening now. Kenny continued. You requested help. Lord Valacrest said nothing. You received it. Still nothing. Now stay out of the way. The transmission ended. Plum whistled softly. Your dad is terrifying. Aurora nodded. Yeah. Plum grinned. I like it. Mira had not moved. Celine turned to her gently. You don't have to be on the first descent. Mira opened her eyes. For a moment she looked younger than she was. Then the softness vanished. Not completely, but enough. Yes, I do. Celine studied her. Mira looked toward the planet. If I don't go now, I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I had. Aurora walked over. You sure? Mira nodded. No. That got a tiny smile from Aurora. Mira breathed in. But I'm going. Aurora held out her hand. Mira took it. Plum appeared on her other side. Ellie stepped closer. No speeches. No dramatic declarations. Just the quiet formation of people who had survived too much together to let one of their own walk into pain alone. Kenny looked at them, then nodded. Good. The first Reach shuttles descended 30 minutes later. Aurora watched Valacrest grow larger through the landing window. The capital rose from a crescent-shaped bay, all white towers and blue glass and elevated gardens. It was beautiful in the polished way old noble houses loved. Everything designed to impress, nothing designed to comfort. Mira sat opposite Aurora. Her face remained still. Too still. Aurora knew that trick. She had used it in the Eclipse. If your face didn't move, maybe the fear couldn't find a way out. Plum leaned across the aisle. So what's the plan when we land? Ellie answered without looking up from her datapad. We assess evacuation systems, review civilian shelters, establish command authority, stop a war if possible. Plum nodded. Cool. A pause. And if the nobles get annoying? Aurora smiled. Then you can talk. Plum's face lit up. Best mission ever. Mira almost laughed. Almost. The shuttle landed inside the Capitol Palace grounds. The moment the ramp lowered, a wall of sound hit them. Not cheers. Not celebration. Crowds. Thousands gathered beyond the security barriers. Some angry. Some frightened. Some desperate. Some holding signs. Some holding children. Some holding nothing but each other. Aurora stepped down first. Then Ellie. Then Plum. Then Mira. The crowd shifted when they saw her. A ripple moved through them. Recognition. Whispers. Pointing. Mira Reach. Mira Valcrest. The girl who had left. The daughter who had been discarded. The heir no one had expected to return. Mira froze halfway down the ramp. Aurora felt it instantly. She turned back. You're all right. Mira swallowed. They're all looking at me. Plum leaned close. Yeah, but half of them are probably thinking your hair looks great. Mira blinked. Despite everything, a laugh escaped. Small, shaky, but real. Aurora smiled. Come on. They walked together. Inside the palace, everything smelled like cold stone and expensive flowers. Mira's parents waited in the receiving hall with a group of nobles arranged behind them like decorative knives. Lady Valacrest looked at Mira first, then at her clothes. House Reach colors. The sight seemed to offend her physically. Good. Aurora enjoyed that. Lord Valacrest stepped forward. Mira. Mira did not answer. The silence made him uncomfortable. He tried again. We're glad you came. Mira looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, No, you're not. The hall went silent. Lord Valacrest's expression tightened. Mira continued. You're glad Reach came. A pause. You're glad I was useful enough to bring them. Lady Valacrest's mouth thinned. This is not the time for childish resentment. Aurora took one step forward. Kenny's voice came from behind them. A careful next sentence would be wise. Everyone turned. Kenny entered with Celine beside him. No crown, no ceremonial armor. Just a dark formal coat and the kind of presence that made the room remember who had won an eclipse, founded a house, and built 9 worlds into loyalty. Celine looked calm, beautiful, dangerous in a completely different way. The nobles immediately shifted. Some bowed, some froze, some tried to decide how much fear was politically appropriate. Kenny ignored most of them. He walked to Mira's side. Celine stood on her other side. The message was obvious. Mira was not alone. Not here. Not anywhere. Lord Valacrest looked at the gathered nobles, then back at Kenny. We should discuss the terms privately. No. Kenny's answer was immediate. Lord Valacrest blinked. No? This will be public. Lady Valacrest stiffened. The internal affairs of House Valacrest are not for public theatre. Celine smiled softly. No. Her voice was gentle. That made it worse. They became public the moment you used your daughter as leverage. Mira's breath caught slightly. Celine did not look away from Lady Valacrest. And they became unforgivable long before that. A murmur moved through the nobles. Lady Valacrest went pale with anger. Kenny turned toward the main hall doors. Open the chamber. Lord Valacrest stared. Kenny looked at him. You have 12 million civilians in danger and 72 hours before an enemy reaches your capital. His voice lowered. Do not waste another second pretending dignity is more important than life. The chamber opened. The declaration took place less than an hour later. Not in a throne room, not in private. In the capital broadcast chamber. Every major screen across Valacrest activated. Every noble house received the feed. Every civilian shelter. Every military command. Every district. Every frightened family watching from homes near the western corridor. Mira stood at the center of the platform. Aurora stood behind her left shoulder. Kenny and Celine behind her right. Plum and Ellie stood off to the side. Not decorative, protective. Lord and Lady Valacrest stood several paces away. For once they looked small. A legal officer read the opening declaration. Mira Valacrest, firstborn daughter, legitimate heir, wrongfully excluded from inheritance records. Unlawfully politically abandoned, publicly recognized. Every word struck the chamber like a bell. Mira did not cry. Aurora was proud of that. She also would have been proud if Mira had cried. Both felt like victory. Then came the second document, the renunciation. Mira stepped forward. The room became completely silent. The legal officer offered her the document. Mira stared at it. This was the chain. This was the hook. This was the last hand trying to pull her backward. Aurora watched her closely. Mira took the document, then looked into the camera. My name is Mira Reach. A ripple moved through the chamber. My birth name was Valacrest. Her voice trembled, then steadied. But names are not homes. Aurora's chest tightened. Mira continued. I was born to House Valacrest. I was raised by House Valacrest. I was used by House Valacrest. Lord Valacrest flinched. Mira did not look at him. And then I was abandoned by House Valacrest. The silence deepened, but I was chosen by House Reach. She looked back briefly. Kenny nodded once. Celine was crying silently. Aurora smiled. Mira turned back to the camera. So today, I accept recognition of the truth. I was born heir to this house. She lifted the document. And today, by my own will, I renounce every claim to it. Lady Valacrest closed her eyes. Mira's voice strengthened. I renounce its throne. I renounce its bloodline authority. I renounce its titles. I renounce its future. A pause and then, but I do not renounce its people. That changed the room. Even Aurora felt it. Mira looked into the camera as though speaking to every child hiding in every shelter. House Reach will help protect civilians. Not because Valacrest rulers deserve saving. Because people do. She placed the signed document onto the table, then stepped back. It was done. No thunder, no explosion. No dramatic collapse. Just freedom. Quiet. Clean. Final. For several seconds nobody moved. Then somewhere outside the chamber, applause began. Soft at first. Then louder, then roaring. Not from nobles, from the streets, from shelters, from workers, from soldiers, from people who had just watched someone refuse a crown and save them anyway. Mira finally broke. Not badly. Just enough. Aurora wrapped an arm around her. Plum wiped her eyes aggressively. I'm not crying. Ellie looked at her. You are absolutely crying. Politically, that means nothing. It means I'm crying with structure. Aurora laughed. Mira laughed too. That mattered. The military response began immediately after. Reach did not move like Valcrest. There was no panic, no wasted motion, no nobles arguing over prestige positions while civilians waited for rescue. Ellie took one look at the Western Corridor maps and began reorganizing evacuation lanes. Within 20 minutes, she had 3 Valcrest officers terrified of her, and 24 logistics commanders following her orders like scripture. Plum went to the civilian shelters, officially to help maintain morale. Unofficially because nobody could stop her. By the end of the first hour, she had organized food distribution, insulted 3 aristocrats, taught children a ridiculous chant about root keepers, and somehow convinced a terrified bakery owner to reopen his ovens for refugee families. Aurora stayed with Mira. Together they toured the first evacuation center. The people there looked exhausted, scared, angry. But when Mira entered, something shifted. A woman holding a baby stood first, then an old man, then a group of teenagers. Nobody bowed, nobody cheered. They simply looked at her, really looked, like they were trying to decide what she was. Valacrest, Reach, traitor, heir, savior. Mira felt it. Aurora did too. Then a little girl stepped forward. She couldn't have been older than 6. She held a small cloth doll against her chest. Are you the princess? Mira froze. Aurora almost stepped in, then stopped. Mira crouched slowly. No. The child frowned. But my mom said you were. Mira smiled softly. I was. Not anymore. Not anymore. Why? Mira thought about it. Then answered honestly. Because I found a better family. The girl considered that, then nodded with the seriousness only children could summon. Is your better family going to stop the bad people? Mira looked toward Aurora. Aurora smiled. Mira looked back at the girl. Yes. The girl hugged her. No warning, no hesitation. Mira froze completely, then slowly hugged her back. Aurora looked away. Not because she didn't want to see, because some moments deserved privacy even in a crowded shelter. The next 6 hours moved like a storm. Reach shield platforms locked into position. Evacuation shuttles began moving civilians from the Western Corridor. Medical teams treated injuries from early border raids. Supply lines stabilized. Valcrest Military Command found itself quietly replaced by people who knew what they were doing. By nightfall, the rival house sent their first communication. Their leader appeared on the main display aboard the Reach command cruiser. A broad man with silver armor and a face built entirely out of arrogance. Kenny listened to his opening threats without blinking. The man declared Valacrest weak, corrupt, leaderless, ripe for rightful conquest. Kenny waited, then asked, Are you finished? The rival lord frowned. Kenny continued, Valacrest is under Reach humanitarian protection. The man laughed. Humanitarian protection? Yes. This is not your war. No. Kenny leaned forward. It is now your mistake. Silence. The rival lord's smile faded. Kenny's voice remained calm. You may withdraw beyond the agricultural border. You may allow civilian evacuation to continue unimpeded. You may present grievances through imperial arbitration. A pause. Or you may continue advancing. The man stared. And if we do? Kenny smiled slightly. Then you will discover why nobody has successfully invaded a reach-protected world in 30 years. The transmission ended. Plum, who had been watching from the side, whispered, That was so hot. Aurora slowly turned. Plum blinked. Strategically, Ellie sighed. Mira laughed so hard she had to sit down. The laughter didn't last long, but it helped. By midnight, the rival army stopped advancing. Not retreating. Not yet. But stopped. That was enough for the first day. Aurora found Mira later on a balcony overlooking the capital. The city below glowed with emergency lights. Shuttles moved like fireflies through the night. Mira stood quietly at the railing. Aurora joined her. For a while neither spoke. Then Mira said, I thought coming back would make me feel smaller. Aurora looked over. Did it? Mira shook her head. No. A pause. It made them look smaller. Aurora smiled faintly. That sounds healthy. It sounds mean. Sometimes healthy sounds mean. Mira laughed softly. The city hummed below. Mira's eyes moved across the skyline. I hate them. Aurora said nothing. Mira continued. But I don't hate this place. That was the hardest truth. Aurora understood immediately. Mira looked down. I thought I had to hate everything connected to them. You don't. I know that now. She breathed in slowly. There are people here who suffered under them too. Aurora nodded. Yeah. And if Reach helps them, Mira paused, maybe some good can come from it. Aurora leaned against the railing. That's usually how Dad thinks. Mira smiled slightly. And you? Aurora looked out at the city. I'm still learning. Mira looked at her. Aurora shrugged. But I think saving people while ruining awful nobles is a pretty good start. Mira laughed. This one was real, the kind of laugh that didn't erase pain, but made room beside it. A message came through Aurora's communicator. Ellie. Rival advance halted. Civilian evacuation at 61%. Plum has somehow started a shelter sing-along. Send help or snacks. Aurora showed Mira. Mira stared, then covered her face. She is impossible. She's Plum. That's what I said. Aurora smiled. Then her expression softened. You did good today. Mira looked away immediately. I just signed papers. No. Aurora turned toward her fully. You stood in front of the world that hurt you and chose to protect it anyway. Mira's eyes filled. Aurora smiled. That's not paperwork. Mira wiped her eyes. I'm tired. Yeah. Can we go home soon? Aurora looked out over the capital. The war wasn't over. The crisis wasn't solved. The rival army still waited beyond the horizon. Valacrest still had to fall apart before it could become anything better. But for the first time since the call, the situation felt less impossible. Aurora placed an arm around Mira's shoulders. Soon, Mira leaned into her. Below them, Reach ships moved through the night. Saving civilians, stopping armies, changing history without asking permission. And somewhere deep inside Valacrest, a house that had survived for centuries on blood and pride, finally began to understand something terrifying. Mira Reach had not returned as a daughter begging to be accepted. She had returned as the proof they had failed, and the family standing behind her had brought a fleet.